You're listening to episode 122 of the D6 podcast.
I don't know anything more important in our society or in the kingdom of God than to help the church, help the family.
Discipleship is not an event, it's a way of life.
And one day it just hit me that discipleship at home was not about doing more. It was about inviting Christ into what we were already doing.
The goal of family ministry is not families sitting on the couch holding hands and singing Kumbaya. The ultimate goal is families that love God, love people, and make disciples of all peoples.
So that's why you're here. You're here to say 1 hour a week, as significant and as awesome as it is, we know that it's not enough and we want to be intentional with every hour.
You're listening to the D6 podcast. Here's your hosts, Ron Hunter and Jeremy Lee.
This is the family ministry podcast that helps you connect the church and home. This is also, Ron, for your information, the last one of our summer format where we only do one interview. Next week we go to 2 interviews.
So you're saying I've got to stop being lazy and get out there and do some interviews?
That's right. Get away from the pool.
Yes.
Your tan is as good as it's going to get, Ron. It's time for you to start doing some interviews. No, it'll be great. And so next week we look forward to kind of getting back into that flow. But let's talk about this week first. We have Megan Marshman, who's a great friend of D6. She has done so much cool stuff, and we'll introduce her properly. But really what we've talked about before is she is just got fire in her belly about the Lord and about life. And
yes, she does.
We want to kind of tap into that today and think about ourselves. How do we develop and foster and grow our passion for God? Not just knowledge, but passion.
Let me warn the listeners, there's no way you're going to have the level of passion Megan exudes, shares, it's all over her. There's very few people that can. However, I would be satisfied with a small fraction of what she has in most areas. And I'm passionate about the areas I'm passionate about. But a lot of people, you look at them and they do not look one bit excited about Christ. Take out paper and pen, take out your digital note sheet, whatever you use to take notes, and start recording this, and then put names beside of it of the people in your church who you think, hey, I'm going to work on 1 or 2 points that Megan gives me with key people in my church to see if I can't get some excited passion flowing in them.
Also want to clarify, we're not trying to teach people how to manufacture passion. That's a little bit challenging because passion is like a fire, and it has a source. It's the result of a source.
Yeah.
So what we're doing is, though, we're talking about how to connect to the source that creates passion. Passion looks different for everybody.
It
Just
does.
Like Ron said, it looks way different for Megan than it does for a lot of us. And that's one of the things I appreciate about getting to interview Megan is I get to experience that, and it is inspiring to me. So I hope it inspires you. Now, before we move very much further, I want to make sure that we, because it is just getting more and more into the fall, and I know that there are some of you that could potentially be thinking about making a switch in your curriculum or doing something new with curriculum, or maybe you've heard about the D6 curriculum and you want to know more. I just want to encourage you guys, if you haven't yet done so, I want to remind you that there are digital samples online right now. So and there's also, Ron, and I guess I'd like you to talk a little bit about this, is that term scope and sequence. And if I ever wanted, I remember whenever I wanted to impress somebody, I would just say, hey, we got a scope and sequence, because it sounds very, very official.
It almost sounds medical, doesn't it?
You have a scope and sequence. Explain what that is, and that people can see that online as well.
Absolutely. The scope it describes what you're going to talk about, and the sequence is over the period of time to which you're going to talk about it. Every curriculum that you purchase out there has a scope and sequence. One of the items that you should consider when evaluating a curriculum is, what are they going to teach you, and how long do you have to dive into it? That determines your depth that you're going to spend in any given topic. Most publishers out there have a 2-year or a 3-year scope and sequence, and therefore they cannot go with any amount of depth into any significant areas of the Bible very long. So one of the things that we have kind of done that is very different from any other publishers. We have a 6-year scope and sequence. That's twice as long. You think, man, but we're going to cover more books of the Bible to our knowledge than any of our competitors at a deeper level. And our scope and sequence bounces back and forth between Old and New Testament so that you don't get bogged down in one or the other too long, because it can get a little monotonous. And then the other aspect is every quarter that you buy, it's 3 studies in one from the Old Testament, one from the New Testament, one is special topics. So that's our scope and sequence. And if you'd like to see it, there is a downloadable poster on our website that you can look at our entire 6-year with a magnified, very detailed current year that you can zoom in and take a look at.
I hope that if you have any curiosity at all about the curriculum, that you'd go to d6family.com, click on D6 curriculum. It's all right there. You can check it out. Now, we're going to check out this interview, and I'm telling you, Megan Marshman is a fun listen, and you'll enjoy it. After the break, we're going to be talking with Megan Marshman about developing a passion for God and helping others do the same. We'll see you then.
Scripture and modern-day research attests to this truth. When one generation commits to and engages in the discipleship of another generation, people of all ages know Jesus and become more like him. This commitment requires us to say goodbye to the myopic focus on the next generation and instead broaden our view to every generation. Every generation. Moms, dads, grandmas and grandpas, aunts and uncles, kindergartners and middle school students, college freshmen and newlyweds, each one awakened to Jesus Christ and living out a vibrant faith with one another. We invite you to adopt this focus at the D6 Conference, a family ministry event built on the Deuteronomy 6 philosophy of generational discipleship. You will experience 3 days of strategy, resources, and action steps to help move your church forward together. Discover what's in store at d6conference.com.
Megan Fate Marshman has devoted her life to loving and listening to God and overflowing his love to others. She's the director of women's ministries at Hume Lake, shepherds young adults at Arbor Road Church, and is the associate dean of Youth Men Academy. How many other things do you need?
Yeah, that's about it.
Well, you also speak and write books, and you're a mom.
And I also hang out on podcasts with people like you, Trevor Lee. Whoa.
Here we go. Developing a passion for God and helping others do the same. That's the topic I chose because after I've cyber-stalked you enough, I feel like I can successfully say that you are a passionate person.
That is true. Let me give you a word for that, or how that actually came about, which you don't have or probably weren't planning on asking, but I'm going to ask myself a question and then answer it.
So, Megan.
So I was always just kind of labeled crazy. So the minute you chose to talk about passion, I got excited because there was a transformative moment in my 20s where a lot of people just referred to me as crazy, crazy, crazy. But I have a tradition in my family where we go around the table at your birthday and we either name or rename you. What that means in our family is names would be like, so names will either do one of two things. Either they will put you in a box. For instance, the name Funny. You get put in this box and you have to be funny. So you get these names throughout your entire year. So what our family does is we want to create names that don't put you in a box, but open up you to become more of who God made you to be. So you can either give a new name that you've seen this year, or you can rename based on names you've heard other people refer to them as. My brother chose to look at me and say, "You are not crazy. You are passionate," which puts crazy to a purpose. And I really appreciated that.
That was amazing.
Yeah. So thanks for figuring out that name, because it is it's a name that I've received from the Lord that I want to be able to live out more fully.
And not only that, you just gave a really cool activity for families to do.
Have to.
I mean, that's a great creative way to offer a blessing to someone.
Have to. And it's become a tradition to the point where anyone who drives to a birthday party, all they're doing the entire drive is thinking about how to name or rename. It's powerful.
It is powerful. Thank you for that.
Turns out names are a big deal to God, so it should be a big deal to us.
So far, you're doing really great at this.
Well, thanks, Trevor.
It's like you've done this before.
No.
All right. let's see, you're back at D6 this year. This year you're hosting the conferences. That's a little bit different, isn't it?
It's a little
Are you
bit
enjoying
different.
it?
Yes and no. Yes, in that it's getting to meet a lot of people and sit down with them and interview. And no, because I feel like I'm busy doing a lot, so I don't get to take as many notes as I'd like.
I also saw you playing the role of Ron Hunter's teenage daughter.
That happened, so thanks for no context.
That was awesome. All right. It's hard to maintain a passion for anything. Well, let me move up one. There are many folks who follow God, but there seem to be few who follow him with real passion. I know for me, many times I'm just a logical guy, and sometimes it's hard to have a relationship with an unseen God.
Yep.
And I don't think I'm the only one. And so to have passion about a relationship with an unseen God is something I think people want to hear about and understand. So let's figure that out. How can someone begin to create, or where do you think we can find or be a part of a passion for God that's genuine?
That's such a good question. I wish I had the right answer, and I don't think that I do, but ironically, I think that's what enables me to keep having it, is because I feel like I haven't arrived there. I think there's been seasons in my life where I felt like, okay, I think I got a pretty good grasp, and I think I'm moving really confidently with him. And when I took that posture, I became less dependent. Therefore, the relationship just began to dissipate. So I've actually always just wanted to say dissipate, so I did successfully. So I think it's a constant hunger for more and truly believing that there is more, not just arriving at places. But my answer to how do you maintain a real passionate relationship with God is to maintain the relationship with God. And to be honest, I think the thing that sparks me more than anything is the promise. I think a lot of us refer to God's promises and then they aren't actual promises. But I believe there is a promise that says if you seek him, you'll find him. Mm-hmm. And so what I've come to realize is if I don't have a passionate relationship, there's probably a missing seeking on my part, even though I know God's always pursuing, he's always doing infinite things. But if I don't seek him, I won't actually find him. So for me, the way that I live up to that promise, he always does his part of that promise. And the times in which I'm not passionate about him, it's probably because I'm not living up to my part.
So in the mundane, how do we seek in the mundane? You know, our patterns, our routines.
Yeah. I'll tell you how I do it. And this is actually spurred on from a conversation with a friend of mine. His name's Steve Carter, and he's out at Willow Creek teaching. And he taught me something that I've been doing the past month just to maintain that daily relationship. So I've gotten into certain rhythms where you spend time with him in his word, you listen to him and do all these different things. He challenged me with a 5-part prayer that has transformed every single day for me since. And it allows me to find him throughout the day. So what we do is we go through the Genesis and Exodus narrative in 5 parts. So first you start in the garden. And the question God, in the midst of sin, in the midst of chaos, distraction, anxiety, fear, all of that, God moves toward his people and asks a simple question in Genesis 3:9, which is, where are you? So I start my conversation with the Lord. All right, where am I? As if God's approaching me. And sometimes I'll go on a walk because I'm very expressive with my hands and I just need to talk it out loud and look like a crazy person.
Yeah, you
don't. It's
a passionate person.
That version's crazy. Back to the original name. But I answer that question. So even this morning, right before I came over here, I sat with the Lord and I went, okay, so where am I? I'm at D6. Why am I at D6? How is my heart in the midst of being here, preparing for things? How am I? I'm about to do a breakout to teach. Do I feel ready to lead? Do I feel under-equipped? And I just have a conversation with them, starting with, where are you? And then if you continue on in the journey, the people find themselves, it goes from the garden, and then you go to Egypt. And you say, and I ask the question, all right, where do I find myself enslaved? Now that sounds like a harsh word, and I think part of me doesn't even want to use that word because it's like, well, compared to people in the world, I am not a slave to anything, but I think I am in subtle ways. And so I start to address, where have I felt a slave? Have I felt a slave to the opinions of other people? Have I felt a slave to how I'm coming across? Have I felt a slave to impressing people? Have I felt a slave to one person that said one thing? I think it was John Acuff that said 1,000 compliments plus 1 criticism equals 1 criticism. Sometimes one person can say one thing and you can think about it for 24 hours. So this 5-part prayer allows me to actually analyze the entire day. What's stuck with me? Is it good that it stuck with me? Where have I been a slave? And then the beauty of it, of course, God releases them from slavery. Moses walks up the mountain. You got Sinai, which is the question, how did you see God? And it is so, probably my favorite part of my morning is that part 3 where I sit there and I look back Because when you seek them, you'll find them. And I find connections that I would have never otherwise seen. I won't go into detail, but one's coming to mind right now of a girl that needed to be seen, and he frustrated me 24 hours prior so that she could be seen. It's a long story. But I find God in the days. Then, as Steve refers to it as Spider-Man theology, I think about them wandering in the desert, the Israelites. But basically, it's how have you been responsible and irresponsible with the things you've been entrusted to you. So Spider-Man theology, with great power comes great responsibility. I like it. But it causes me to go, all right, so God's given me relationships, jobs, opportunities. He's given me people. He's given me encounters, anything. He's given me chores. How have I been responsible in those relationships or with the giftings he's given me, and how have I been irresponsible? And oftentimes that turns into confession. And then lastly, I go into prayer, which is the last one, which is what's my next step? And it's the posture of the Israelites in the desert, dependent upon the cloud. When do we move? When God moves. And so I ask God, where are you moving and how can I be faithful, obedient today? That's how I remain my passion.
That's great. So 5, can we review them one more time?
Garden, where are you?
Okay.
Number 2 is?
I'm trying to remember.
You got this. It's so memorable. You got it, right? Slavery in Egypt.
Okay.
Sinai, where'd you see God? The desert, responsible, irresponsible. The cloud.
Boom.
Next steps.
Well, we don't even have to. Let's just be
done.
done.
I agree. It's good to be. No, I'm serious. I'm good if you are. Because I'll say that. I feel the need to say nothing less. Because if someone were to take me up on that, I actually presented that to a group of young adults that I disciple, and they've been doing it every day since. And our relationship with the Lord has become rich. And so if that's all you take away, I think it's not mine. It's not original to me, but the conversations are very original to me with the Lord, which is what I need.
Can we talk about selfless just for a second?
Sure.
I don't, I know you are selfless, so to talk about selfless.
It's ironic. I get it.
Good. Please talk about it. Please share with us about this book.
Great. The book is basically, it's how I've learned to think less about myself, but simultaneously more of myself at the exact same time. So it's how to walk in. So the book basically takes a journey and walks through the biblical narrative of understanding how God's the main character of your life. The story's not about you, but the story involves you, which is actually my approach to ministry. Getting young people to understand, and adults, who am I kidding, and myself, to understand the story's not about me, but it involves me. So how do you do that? It's not about me is humbling. It involves me is empowering. So I think that's the posture I want to always have. And so the book basically takes on the journey of how do you develop that type of posture where you walk into rooms and you're free from being merely aware of yourself, but you're empowered to be exactly yourself.
Selfless is the name of her book. Her name is Megan Marshman. Thank you for your passion. Passion's contagious. So very much appreciate it. Online, meganfate.com is the best place.
Yeah.
Go find her there. Thank you very much.
D6 Curriculum is a comprehensive discipleship strategy for all ages in your church. Solid biblical content teaches wise decision-making, and the curriculum emphasizes a biblical worldview. Each quarter of D6 Curriculum contains 3 studies, 1 Old Testament, 1 New Testament, and 1 special topic study addressing cultural issues, apologetics, and Christian living. D6 is great for use in life group, small group, or Sunday school. D6 Curriculum is affordable and easy to use. You can order teaching materials in print or digital format. See how D6 Curriculum gets every age on the same page at d6family.com.
Thank you, Megan. I want to remind our listeners once again that they may not be as over the top as you are, but you've given us some very practical ways that we can get excited about Jesus Christ today. And I just love hearing your teaching every time we're around. Jeremy, good job with the interview on that.
Yes, and the interview next week is going to be fun as well. We have
2 incredible guests.
Yes, I'll start with one, Dr. Richard Ross.
Who's that?
We never heard of him.
Never heard of him.
He is going to be talking to us about the senior pastor and the reformation of youth ministry. He has gotten to a stage in his career where he's now older than a lot of the senior pastors.
Yes,
so now
he
can, this is what I love about him. He can speak to the senior pastor in the language of the youth minister. I think he's fully recognized that, been called by God to do that, and accepted that call in some really fun ways. He's written books, and he's spoken and taught about this, and I think he has helped. That has been a very hard issue that churches face, is that relationship between youth minister and senior pastor. Usually they're both pretty dynamic personalities, and sometimes they clash. And for sure, the youth ministers probably they underestimate the influence of the pastor on what they're doing, think that they can go without that influence, and they can't. And Dr. Richard Ross is doing an amazing job of teaching us and helping us through navigate that whole deal. And who do you have next week?
Next week, I'm interviewing Aaron Pontius, and he's going to be talking about how to lead both students and parents into deeper conversations. There are times that we don't view student ministry as deep enough, and if it is deep enough, are we bringing along the parents in the same conversations? And that's how we're going to try to connect the two next week with Aaron.
Thank you guys for listening. We have loved the summer, but now it's time to move towards the fall and football. Hope you guys have a great week of ministry.
D6 conference.
Talk to you later.
You've been listening to the D6 Podcast. You can learn more about D6 at d6family.com. And if you're a minister, we invite you to join the D6 Leader Network by going to d6leader.net.